Hello again, everybody. Welcome to Leading the Way Today, powered by Leadership America. I'm Scott Murray.
And I'm Angel Carlton. Great to have you with us as we share with you the insights of prominent and influential leaders from some of the most recognized companies and organizations in America.
We're going to be taking a peek behind the curtain at all of these successful for-profit and not-for-profit entities and share their secrets and strategies for success, as well as their perspectives on leadership and life.
From culture to collaboration, creativity to innovation, transparency to diversity, we'll be addressing how these leaders in America are creating legacies and leading the way today.
And we are most excited and certainly honored to welcome the CEO of Toyota North America. And he is also the Senior Managing Officer of parent company Toyota Motor Corporation, James Lentz.
Scott and Angel, thank you very much. I appreciate the call.
And I have to tell you, I'm a Toyota 4Runner and FJ owner for the last 25, 30 years. So does that give me extra points or anything like that or not?
Of course. Thank you much for being a loyal customer. Much appreciated.
All right.
Well, I might be able to score some points here, too, because I heard, Jim, you grew up in Glen Ellen, Illinois, which happens to be just a couple towns away from where I grew up in Wooddale. So we're from the same part of the world.
Wonderful. It's a nice place to be from, as I say.
Yeah, exactly. Which is why we're living in
but we
Texas
all got to
now.
Texas as quickly as we could, right?
It just took some of us a few years longer.
Exactly right.
Well,
James,
welcome.
Again, our thanks for stopping by. We're going to kick things off with what we call our lightning round. It's 5 questions that kind of give us some insight as to where you came from, define who you are, and just some of the things that you think are important in your world. So just some short answers, and if you're ready, we're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay.
Right.
Very simply, Jim, what was your first job, and what did you learn from it?
So my very first job was a summer job. I was 15, and I sold vacuum cleaners door to door. And probably a couple things I learned from it. Number one is being a salesperson is really hard work. And number two is it's really important that I found personally to work for an ethical company because selling vacuums door to door wasn't the most ethical business practice. A lot of pressure on people. And so I learned a lot from that experience.
That's a great answer. I like that. And I like the word ethical. Good for you. What was, and this, just for fun, we asked you what your first job was. What was the first car you had, make and model? I'm just kind of curious.
So I got it from my aunt when she passed away, and it was a 1963 Corvair Monza.
Oh my gosh, you're kidding. Oh,
No,
I remember the Chevy Corvair. I remember those things. I hate to say it, but I do.
Yeah. It was actually a nice interior package. I could fit all my hockey gear in it and stuff, but it was unsafe at any speed. I mean, once you got above 35 miles an hour, the car began to float, and it was really tough to keep it on the road.
You were kind of on your own, huh? Oh, that's great. All right, continue on with our top 5.
We know
Angel.
you can't make it to the top on your own. So who were your mentors? Who are your top 2 mentors, and how did they influence you, Jim?
Once I'll give you a couple. The easiest one is my father. My father's still with us. In fact, he moved to Texas a couple months ago, my mom and dad.
Nice.
And he was a printing salesman, and he was an entrepreneur that started his own company. So I really kind of understood from watching him and watching his interaction with people about how important it is to be diplomatic, to always be listening and learning to be a good salesperson. But he was also very, very innovative in developing new and different products in the printing world. And he was always a very, very positive person as he looked forward in life. So first and foremost, by far, my father. But there are 3 others that have had a pretty big influence. One guy, and it's strange, I even remember his name. His name was Terry Cole, and he was a golf pro. I started playing golf when I was about 10 years old. And he used to have me hit hundreds of golf balls from 100 yards, from 80 yards, from 60 yards, because he wanted to make sure that I learned that you never give up in the game, that if you hit the ball in the tree somewhere, you can chip out and you have the confidence to be able to get up and down from anywhere on the golf course. So I really learned a lot about confidence from him. When I look at my days at the University of Denver, Ron Rizzuto was a finance professor at DU, and he really taught me about the science of decision making and how to have discipline in business. There's an art to business, but there's also a lot of science. And probably the last person was a guy by the name of Brian Bergsteinson. And Brian was a fellow Toyota associate. He's now retired. And he was the general manager when I was in Portland. He ran HR. He ran Lexus for a time. And he was a real car guy, but he really wore his heart on his sleeve. He was a passionate guy, passionate about people and about developing people. And he was the guy that really gave me a second chance when I was almost fired when I was working in our Portland region.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Good answers. And Dad always seems to be there, doesn't Angel?
You know what? We do.
Always the good dads. Always
I love
the good
that
dads.
there's a positive influence by our fathers. And we have that parallel as well. My dad, too, was a printer and started his own printing company. So that's interesting.
That's great stuff.
But yeah, wow. You've learned quite a bit from these influential individuals in your life. Love it.
Well, let me move on here with our top five. How about the most significant experience in developing your skills as a leader? I saw someplace in an article someplace they refer to you as Gentle Jim, just because of who you are and what you're all about and how you handle yourself in life. But it says that you have really quietly become one of the most powerful North America CEOs in Toyota's close to 6-decade history. I guess about 58 years here in the US of A, 60 years, 61 years, whatever it is. Where did that come from? What has been the most significant experience in developing your skills as a great leader?
Well, I think it came from adversity. I mentioned Brian Bergsteinson. I was fairly new to the company working in our Portland regional sales office. I think I was about 3 or 4 years into the company, had 2 very young children. And I worked for a very old school manager, kind of my way or the highway kind of guy. And he told me that I was too soft on people and that if I wanted to continue to work for the company, I was going to have to change how I dealt with people or find a new job. And being the nice guy that he was, he gave me the weekend to decide. And I can tell you that was a tough weekend trying to decide what to do because I really needed my job. It was the only job I had. Wife and 2 young kids at home. But it really became crystal clear to me that what I was being asked to do was to decide between my core values or pleasing my boss. And I had never really thought about what my core values were before. Long story short, I told him I wasn't going to change. He was going to have to fire me. Being the nice guy that he was, he gave me 2 weeks to find another job. And that's when Brian Bergsteinson, who was head of HR at the time, found a job for me back at our corporate offices. I took a demotion and started my career over again. That was back in 1987. But to me, what was important about that was I really learned who I was. I learned what my core values were. And what I really learned was that the values that I hold deep inside are the same values that the company has. About respecting people, about working as a team, about constantly improving, about challenging. So it was a difficult time, but it served me well because it really allowed me to understand who I was and how I fit into Toyota. And frankly, I think that's why I've been so happy and successful with this company for all these years, is because those values match, the values of the individual and the values of the company.
Wow, what a great answer. I often say we are defined, who we are is defined by the choices we make. And way to really stay true to who you are. That's great leadership right there. Great role model. So, Jim, knowing where you've come from and where you are now, what would be the best advice you can give the next generation of a young professional in today's changing world?
I think the first one is to understand that you lead people and you manage projects. Too often we talk about managers, and that's really about working on the business side of things, understanding cost, understanding timelines, but you don't manage people, you lead people. And I think the other thing that I've been successful in doing is I'm a pretty good decision maker, but I'm a problem solver, not a critic. The last thing you want to do is get into a meeting and everybody tells you what's wrong. I know what's wrong. That's why we're together. What I need to know is what are the options that I have? Because if I'm given one option to solve a problem, and that's what I choose, it may be good, it may be bad, but if I have a diverse group of people around me that give me 5 or 6 or 7 different options, I'm pretty good at selecting the right one. And the more diverse the options, likely the better decision that I'm going to make. I think the other thing is it's always important to build a strong foundation. Through my career, I've been with this company almost 34 years now, and I've had probably 15, 18 different jobs. And a lot of those were lateral movements across the company. But I've always learned from that. I've been able to use that to build a much stronger foundation. The one question that I always hate to be asked is timeline questions. Where do you want to be in 10 years? To me, that's the dumbest question in the world. To me, what I want to be doing is adding value to our business and into society in 10 years. So to me, those are the key things for younger people to understand is you've got to be patient. But the most important thing is you really have to be a leader of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and what you do today really does lay the groundwork for where you'll be in 10 years.
No, that's exactly right.
Absolutely. And I love your perspective on diversity as well and the importance of that. We have found in high-performing organizations that's really important, and you're already tapping into that, getting all those different ideas from your diverse groups. How would you describe your most defining moment? And I think you might have alluded to that already, but is there a defining moment in your life that you can speak of that really got you to where you are today?
Yeah, internally, personally, it was really that Portland experience that I had, because it helped me understand who I am. But there are other defining moments. I think the opportunity that I had to start a new brand called Scion that we started back in 2003. That was a great experience for me because, back at that time, in the mid 1995, 98, if you looked at who the youth brands were in the industry, it was VW, it was Mitsubishi. And if you looked at some of the older, more stodgy brands, that's where Toyota fell. And Toyota back then, we were really viewed as a rational brand. It was about quality, dependability, and reliability. But we really lacked the emotional part of a brand. We weren't seen as being fun to drive. We weren't seen as being stylish. And we knew that Gen Y was going to be the big player in the marketplace into the future. So we wanted to create this separate brand to kind of be a laboratory about Gen Y, so that we understood what made them tick, what kind of vehicles they wanted, what kind of sales process they liked. So it was really an exciting 10 years of the brand lasted about 10 years. We ended it in about 2015, but over that time period, we sold 1 million vehicles, and we really understood about that buyer that the fact is that time is probably their most important asset. And as a result, we introduced one price selling. But all things end. We needed to deploy those resources elsewhere. And frankly, the mission was really complete because today, if you look at the lineup of Toyota products, you mentioned FJ Cruiser earlier. How we developed that vehicle, how we marketed that vehicle is a direct result of what we learned from Scion.
Cool. Did you have like a focus group with the Gen Y generation, or how did you learn from them?
Well, we did a lot of focus groups, a lot of nightclubs. We
just working, honey.
Yes, I'm just working again.
Yeah.
But it was important to understand because that group is interesting. A lot of people say that they're kind of negative on things. They're not. They're actually very, very positive, but they've got a real strong BS meter. And once you violate that, that's where the negativity comes in. So how you approach them from a marketing standpoint, they're not a generation that spends a lot of time with traditional media, electronic media, whether it be radio or whether it be television. So we spent a lot of time understanding how we could reach them through events, through music, through fashion. And it was quite an eye-opening experience that we have now used with many of our other products, including to help reach young buyers today.
Very interesting. Toyota's move to Texas, though, when you talk about that, is certainly garnered a lot of attention. How's your new home in Plano? Have you been pleased with the move and what has taken place over the last couple of years?
Yeah, very much so. So my wife and I, we were among the first 50 to move when we opened up our temporary headquarters. And the reason for that is I thought it was really important that the boss moves first.
Right.
And I said in California and said, go on out there, let me know what it's like, and I'll see you in 3 years. That really is not being a very good leader. So we sold our home in California, bought a home out here in Texas, and it's been fantastic. I mean, it's everything that we had hoped that it would be. Because when we made this move, we really took a hard look at what location in the country would be best for the company, but also what would be best for our team members. And we wanted to make sure that we found somewhere had good quality of life. So great schools, less commute times, lower cost of housing, and all of that has taken place. And I have to tell you, the one thing that I hear from almost everyone that's made the move, whether it's from Kentucky or from California, is how genuine people are here and how kind they are and how much it's part of being part of a community here. It's been absolutely fantastic.
Oh, that's great to hear. I agree, as being a transplant myself. And you're certainly not the only major company moving to Texas these days. We are home to over 50 Fortune 500 companies, and it keeps growing. We're second to New York on that list. So I just can't begin to think of the years of planning that must have gone into making such a move. Jim, can you share with us a little bit about the strategy that you put forth to make it all happen?
Sure. So this started back in 2013, and our CEO Toyota decided that he was going to look at how the world is managed, and he decided that he was going to create 8 different regions of the world, and I was going to be made the CEO of the North American region. And when we were talking about it, he said, what's the one thing that you can do to make sure that we can sustain our business for the future? And so I'm kind of thinking about, okay, I'll put together a 5 or a 10-year plan. And he looked at me, he says, you don't get it, do you? And I guess I don't. And he said, what's the one thing that you can do today to sustain our business for the next 50 years? That's a much bigger question.
Wow.
And so I thought about it for the next month. And in the U.S., everyone thinks of Toyota as being a company. And the fact of the matter is, we are actually a series of affiliated corporations. We have a sales company. We have a finance company. We have an R&D and manufacturing company. We had corporate offices. And we were spread from California to New York. And I went back and I told Akio that we really need to become one Toyota because we are and always will be a consensus-driven company. And the larger the company gets and the larger our geographic footprint, the more difficult it gets to make consensus decisions quickly. And he thought about it for maybe 5 minutes, and he said, let's do a feasibility study and see if you can get it done. And I put together a small team of about 6 people. And for about the next 6 months, we decided, we did the analysis to say, is it possible for us to even make this move? And so that was starting in April of 13. By April of 14, we had gone to the board with a location and made the decision to make the move. And, a couple years later, here we are. So by Toyota standards, it was a very fast decision-making process. And to go from concept to physically being in the location in about 4 years was lightning speed.
Well, it sounds like you've been spot on from the get-go. It's great to hear stories like that because so often you see whether it's a startup or it's a company like you that's moving to a new location and really kind of start up in a different geographic area, and they really don't know what to anticipate and what's going to be there. And it sounds like you hit a home run on all accounts. And another thing that I wanted to talk about, Jim, is it seems a lot of companies these days are wanting to create maybe a more collaborative workspace for their employees. The employees in this is really great to see is more of a focus of what the executive level is looking to do. And I kind of get the feeling from, again, doing some of the research on you personally, you've kind of taken that to a whole new higher level to not only be collaborative, but one that allows your employees to react even quicker to the rapid change that might be before them. So can you elaborate on what that looks like at your new headquarters and how you continue to do things on behalf of all of your employees?
Sure. As I look back at our sales office, which was in Torrance, California, nice building built in 1982, but it didn't have the physical bones for today's office environment. And as I grew up in the company, the physical space might have been a nice to have, but it wasn't that important. Today, if you want to be an employer of choice, and if you want to attract the best and the brightest of Gen Y, Gen Z coming up behind that, the physical environment is critical. And in our case, we created the environment where we have some open offices, we have some enclosed offices. In our case, all the enclosed offices are in the center or the core of the building, and everyone else that is not enclosed is towards the windows and towards the light, which is kind of the opposite way most people do it. But it was important for us that we had people sitting in small groups where they can innovate and collaborate, where they're encouraged to get up away from their workspace and sit in collaborative areas. In the old days, collaborative areas were conference rooms. Today, it may be a couch that's under a stairwell somewhere where people can kind of get together and just think and talk and problem solve and work things out. And that's what this environment allows us to do here, because I would say the old environment was about 80% private workspace, 20% collaborative. This is more 50-50. And we want people to be able to get up and move around. You have the technology that people can be reached on their cell phones. They're not tied to a phone and tied to their desk. We're in an environment here where we have very few filing cabinets. We don't work a lot with paper. Almost everything now is done digitally and electronically, so we can store information and share information. Being able to be transparent and share information is critical today if you're going to make quick decisions. So the whole campus environment is around speed and transparency, innovation, and around collaboration.
And how about the employees? I would imagine they're responding to their new space and surroundings in a very positive, productive way.
Very, very much so, very much so. And it's great because we have people from the sales company, the finance company, the manufacturing company. Our corporate offices are now all physically under one campus roof, where they can work much closer together. I can build stronger leaders in the future, because in the past, if I wanted someone to have manufacturing experience, they literally would resign from the sales company, move 2,000 miles, and join the manufacturing company. Today, they can move floors of a building or from building to building. So I think we're going to give people much more opportunity. We're going to be able to challenge them and make stronger leaders for the company for the future.
Yes. Creating a collaborative environment and workspace is so important, and it certainly does inspire a more agile workforce. You've created that environment so that it's conducive for innovation, as you said. What is your approach to developing the employees so they can respond quickly and become more agile? and address the changes in the marketplace and the ever-evolving needs of the customer?
Sure. A big part of it is understanding their needs. I hate the idea of sitting down and having personnel reviews. To me, they need to be more coaching sessions so that it's good, positive feedback both ways. So that the leader can talk to them about what they're doing well, where they can make improvements. But the team member can also make sure that we understand what are their needs, what are their desires, what are their interests. Maybe someone is in the logistics area, and they'd really like to be involved in the marketing area. So when a position opens up in marketing, we have an automatic list of people that we can provide a manager to be able to make those decisions. So it's really understanding the organization. We are an organization of generalists. For the most part, people move around in different aspects of the company to be able to build that strong base. I think I mentioned before, I think I've had 15 or 18 different jobs throughout my career at the company. Most of them are 3 or 4 years, and you build that very strong foundation. And that's how you build strong leaders, because it's critical whether you're in sales and marketing or R&D or manufacturing, that it's always most critical to understand your customer and understand how they use the product, what their needs are, how we can provide them the mobility that they need. And that's where I think the business is really changing, that we're moving away from just being an automotive company and an automotive industry into a mobility industry, whether it's helping people, get across town or helping people get across a room. That's the future of this business.
And it's often been said that culture is a direct reflection of its leadership. So with that in mind, Jim, obviously you're doing everything right, or certainly most of it right. With that in mind, how would you describe that culture that exists not only in Plano, but just within Toyota?
Yeah, it's interesting. Whether you're here in Plano, whether you're in an office in South America, whether you're in Japan, we all feed off of the same core value structure. And kind of the core values are respect for people, whether that's the person working next to you or whether that's the customer or whether that's the society that you're in. Teamwork. This is all about, maximizing team performance as a company. It's always about having a long-term vision and always challenging that vision into the future. It's about a term we call Kaizen, which means continuous improvement. How we may take small steps, but it results in innovation and evolution over time. And then the final piece of it is what we call Genji Gambutsu. And that really means to go to the source to understand the facts. So it's important as a decision maker that you don't rely just on a group that may surround you, because sometimes you're insulated from information. Sometimes you can't get a real true understanding of what's happening by reading a report. You have to physically go to a location to understand what's going on. So, respect, teamwork, challenge, constant improvement, and going and seeing, that's kind of what the core value of this company is built on. And then the culture evolves from that. Mm-hmm. So the policies and practices that we put in place that rewards people for following those core values is kind of what the culture becomes. And, to all of us, we all know that culture is really kind of what happens when no one's looking.
Yeah.
And it's interesting. We are a company that through time has had maybe a 2 to 3% attrition rate. So in an average year, outside of the manufacturing environment, I may only hire 50 or 60 people. So for us to come to Texas and hire 1,000 people was a big deal for us. We've never done anything like that. And a lot of people were worried, is it going to change the culture of the organization? And I think as people understand these core values, and actually I think the culture is becoming stronger by bringing in new ideas and new perspectives from people. I think that the culture is intact. The values are still at the core, and we are becoming a stronger company as a result of bringing in all these new ideas.
Yes, and I found that when you have that solid culture, you tend to attract that type of talent that has that same level of respect as you're referring to. And that's fantastic. There's a lot of good people in Texas, so that's great to hear. I understand you take a lot of trips to Japan every year with what you just said, having to go and experience the environment to see what's happening. That's a lot of travel. I would imagine your weeks are full. On a personal level, Jim, what is left on your bucket list?
That's an interesting question. I fly probably about 300,000 miles a year. I'm in the office about 4 to 5 days a month. And the rest of the time is out visiting plants, sales locations, dealerships, and other parts of the world. What's on my bucket list? I have seen so much of the world. I have not been to the Golden Triangle. I'd like to go there. I think at some point in time in the future when I retire, I think I'd love to teach.
Oh, I love that.
I think I'd love to go back into the university environment and kind of share what I've learned, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and kind of have people understand that to be successful in life, it's really about the art and the science of what you do. It's about treating people with respect, regardless of where they are in the organization. It's about understanding that leadership is not about hierarchy. I can tell you from my Scion experience that it was really about who has the knowledge, who has the expertise, who has the passion to take on a given project. And that's where leadership comes from. It's not, the boss is not the leader. It's whoever has that passion to take on a task as a leader. So I think that would be fun to do.
Wow. What a great legacy.
Boy, it sure is. And I'll tell you what, when you become a teacher, I'd like to be a student in your class.
I've already been a student on this show.
Well, I mean, he talks about respect and teamwork and challenge and the culture that evolves from all of those core values. I mean, that's what life really should be all about. So let me say, you've got two big fans right here. We can't thank you enough. And I'll tell you what, you need to write a book, too, and share your culture about the leadership skills. I don't know if that's on your agenda or your bucket list, Jim, but I would say I'd love to be a part of that and read that someday. So step aside and be a part of that. Hey, we can't thank you enough for joining us. One other thing that I thought you might say in bucket list, have you ever played at Augusta? We had...
Actually, I have.
Oh, you have, because we had who was it? Jim Lentz, the president of the Dallas Stars hockey team. He has been all over the world and was the president of the Texas Rangers, CEO of the Detroit Red Wings hockey team, CEO now and president of the Dallas Stars. And he said his bucket list is to play at Augusta National just once. And I know you're quite the golfer because I saw you're a 4 handicap for Pete's sake. When do you get time? That's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, I used to be a 2, so it's
wow.
But I've always been gifted to have a fairly smooth swing, even as I age. And I still go back to those days of Terry Cole, where you never give up on the golf course.
Love it.
Is that because you were a good hockey player growing up?
I think so. I think my days at University of Denver, which has a great hockey program and now a great golf program, they do go hand in hand. There's a little bit of that eye-hand coordination that definitely helps.
Well, I tell you what, eye-hand coordination or just the incredible culture that you have brought to this world and certainly to Toyota, we cannot thank you enough. Continued success. This is Jim Lentz, CEO of Toyota North America, our special guest on Leading the Way. A giant thank you from us both.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Scott and Angel.
I'm Scott Murray.
And I'm Angel Carlton.
And as we always remind you, live your legacy by leading the way. Have a great week, everybody.